so the energy in here I can feel is not the energy I'm looking for, so I'm going to sing you a song, all right? Just to get your energy pumped up. So, Mother Africa, her rivers flowing, Stimbella, Stimbella. Mother Africa, her rivers flowing, Stimbella, Stimbella. Thank you for waking up and being part of the COP conference. Gabor has already introduced me. My name is Hachipuka Banda, but before I go forward to tell you what I do, I just want you to know that I plan to be the first female president of Zambia, so you've heard it first. So in the future, when you come looking for me, you can actually say, well, we spoke to her and she actually sang us a song. So basically, my whole background, as Gabor has mentioned, I work with small-scale women farmers in Zambia. But my project is not just confined to Zambia. It also, the plan is it expands across Africa as a whole. Because as we've heard from Precious as well, our similarities in Africa, our challenges are all the same. So I'm not going to give you great detail about what our methodologies are or what we're doing. We've heard that from Francisco, and basically everyone that's here has had a bit of experience or is interested in learning more about regenerative agriculture. So I'm just going to give you an overview of what I feel are the most important issues that our current governments and as a whole, the COP conferences should focus on and start heading towards. So basically, as I stated, I work with small-scale women farmers. I just decided to put together a quick PowerPoint that gives you an image of what's happening in Zambia and in other parts of Africa. So basically, like you already know, we all know the challenges. Precious already mentioned the 2018 drought system. One of the things I wanted to highlight in these pictures is our loss of soil. Our soil quality has become very dry and very poor. And that's also because of the type of agricultural practices that farmers have been encouraged to do. One of the major agricultural practices is in Africa what we call a chitemene system, the burning system. Instead of actually farming your land, it's easier to go in and burn all the shrub so that, you know, it's quicker for you to be able to plant when the rain comes. We found because of this type of practice, it's reduced the amount of agroforestry that's there, it's reduced the amount of soil cover, and it's destroyed our soils, leaving it bare and dry for wind damage, water runoff, and a number of other things. Our whole focus as a project, our methodology simplified, has been to replenish and rejuvenate the soil and to ensure cover of the soil so that way it brings back the soil moisture. It also allows slow seepage of water, even if there are very low rainfalls during the year. It allows slow seepage of water into the soil. And how we do this is by encouraging farmers to do what we call mulching, using dry leaves and dry grass as well as after they have harvested. Instead of removing and feeding all of what they've harvested to cattle, they can use the stalks to actually cover the soil to protect it during that year. We've done this in a number of countries, Zambia as well as Malawi, Tanzania, and the Gambia. And the great thing that we focus on, which is a major part of our project, is seed saving. I know a lot of African governments have signed on to policies not allowing farmers to save seed, especially when you're talking about hybrid seeds. But one thing that isn't mentioned and isn't emphasized is the fact that a number of African countries have indigenous seeds. Seeds from way before hybrid seeds were brought in during colonial times, industrial times, into the African agriculture industry. Now, the great part about our indigenous seed is the seed itself is adaptable. In places like Zambia, we have 8 to 10 different varieties of seed. Go by red Silu tuba. These are seeds the farmers have been able to save and pass down generation after generation. Because that's what African continents are. They're generational farming families where agriculture is our main basis. When you look at a number of African countries, when you look at a number of African countries and you look at our populations, the majority of people live in rural areas. Their focus is agriculture, it's farming. And this has been passed down generation after generation. It's only now where we look at generational farming as being threatened because there's more encouragement to use inputs for higher production, higher yield, and more money-making schemes. But what's happening is the farmer is losing their confidence in their former agricultural practices. And not only is that happening, it's putting farmers in debt, because in a lot of cases, where the farmers have the input, they're still not able to harvest any yields, because at the end of the day, the climate is the climate. The drought situation's happening. When there's no rain, there's no rain. But we need to re-encourage farmers, rejuvenate farmers in knowing that their agricultural practices from before, their knowledge about when rains would come and how they monitor those rains is information that should be valued. And we shouldn't just turn towards technology and forget the natural technologies and natural information that exists in the farmer. One of the main aspects I want to focus on is, and it's a tied-in theme when we talk to farmers. I'm basically a farmer. I represent the voice piece of farmers. The thing that we should look at is not just the agricultural practices and the CO2 drawdown. It's the aspect that these agricultural practices, that we're not only rejuvenating soils, we're not only drawing down carbon, but we're rejuvenating communities as a whole. That our agriculture, when you look at us as Africans, when you look at farmers in Chile, it's part of their bloodstream, their life force, they're part of the land. So when you rejuvenate that land, you find that you're rejuvenating communities, you're rejuvenating households. And one of the main reasons for me why we focus on bringing women together and educating women is because we believe that when you educate a woman, you educate an entire community. And we found that that has brought a lot of impact. If you look at some of the pictures on the screen, you'll find that you'll see pictures of the community leaders being part and parcel. That this project started out with 20 farm families and has now grown to over 5,000 farm families. And the great part about it is annually we host an event called the Natural Agriculture Show, which allows farmers to come into one place and teach community people about the benefits of not only natural agriculture, the income benefits, the cost effectiveness of natural agriculture, and they physically show the community the success of their produce, the success of their yield. The great part about these events as well also shows farmers about how even in difficult times, like the 2018 drought, a good percentage of our farmers, at least 20% plus, were still able to harvest. Even if they were not harvesting large quantities, they were still able to harvest to feed their families. The problem then becomes, how do you sustain a program like this and make it more viable to farmers? How do you create a value chain that's solid and has a great foundation to ensure sustainability so that farmers aren't reaching out and constantly focused on a begging bowl system? Which is what donor communities and what our governments are putting us into when we continue to support fertilizer and input support programs. What we're looking for is long-term sustainability, for farmers to be able to sustain themselves, to be able to provide livelihoods to their families, to feed their families, and to be able to provide enough produce to be able to supply our country and beyond. But the only way that can be done is if we get support from our governments to expand these programs. And what we need to do is build infrastructure systems that would be able to work with farmers to be able to distribute their produce, to educate them about regenerative agriculture and other systems. What we also need to look at on a major scale, which is what I wanted to conclude on, is we need to look at the next generation of farmers. If you actually look at the current generation of farmers across the world, I think you would agree with me that the demographic is 40 and above. In some cases, I'm actually very comfortable to say 50 and above. The small-scale farmer is disappearing, ladies and gentlemen, and will disappear in the next decade or the next 2 decades to come, because we're not encouraging young people to become farmers. It's not looking like a viable industry that they can be invested in. What they want is jobs, they want technology, they want to live the American and European dream. Hence you have heavy migration and people drowning in seas. There's a situation in our country where we're getting rural-urban migration with young people going to the cities to commit crimes and be homeless because they're saying to themselves, well, I don't want to be a farmer, what's the benefit of it? We need to be clear at this COP conference, what are our actions? Paris was 4 years ago, it's done. The excitement is done. What is the next step? We keep talking about climate finance. I want to move away from the dependency of donor and financing. I want to look to my government to say, well, you've got an infrastructure already set up with NGOs like myself and 1,000 other NGOs that are willing to come on board as our contribution to our countries, to come together and expand programs that have already shown their success. Our governments need to wake up to the reality that this is not just an opportunity for the world to see how Africa and the individual countries can make a difference. It's an opportunity for us to make a change for the next generation. Let's change the value systems, ladies and gentlemen. Let's show farmers that the hard work you're putting into your agriculture is the money that you're going to get back. That agriculture is a viable industry that can pay back farmers and not only feed your families, but feed the rest of the world. Thank you very much for your time, ladies.